Hello, everybody. This is Noah and John, and we are from UrbanDigs, and this is Talking Manhattan. And John, we got a good one today. We got Kane Manera over at Corcoran. This guy is a producer, gigantic listings, doing a bunch of volume, sees a lot of stuff, especially the higher end and some new developments in prime Brooklyn. Over 10 years experience in this market. I had the honor of talking with him yesterday to prep for this, and I think this is going to be a good one today, John.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I think Kane, one of your listings is $40 million plus sector. I don't even know if that's a sector, but it's way up there. So I'm looking to, really drilling down into like this uber luxury state of the market.
Me too. Me too. And without further ado, Kane, we're going to get right into it. Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask you that first question. Everyone wants to know what's going on. What is happening in the state of the New York City real estate market today?
Everything is going on right now in the New York City market. We have increased sales volume by about 3% year on year, which is surprising to a lot of people considering it feels very flat and very slow out there. And I think probably the reason behind that sentiment and feeling is there's just no inventory. We are at an all-time inventory low. Well, when I say all-time, 2017, I think, was the last time we had inventory this low. So there's not a lot around. There's not a lot being marketed. But I think there are a lot of individuals who are cash rich, who have been renting for a very long time and very tired of renting at very high prices, looking to purchase. And so if they have a savvy broker, the savvy brokers have been digging deeply. And I think that's why you've seen a little uptick in the number of sales that have happened. But within that, the caveat is numbers are going down. The price per square foot on average is the lowest in around a decade, excluding 2020. And that's for the Manhattan market. That's around 2,250 dollars per square foot. So we're seeing a lot of different things going on right now in the market. But the great part is that transactions are happening. So as long as that's going on, people still want to be in Manhattan, and we have a city that people love still. So I'm looking forward to seeing what goes on in the next quarter, just given the fact that we have a political cycle coming up. Historically speaking, the New York market drops about 5% during election cycles. That being said, we have already had a price drop baked in because of these interest rate rises and people's general sentiment and confidence in the market. So it will be interesting to see whether that cools off a little more, especially without the inventory. I suspect people are just going to hit the pause button for a little bit. And anyone who is seriously looking during this next quarter, I think, you buyers and sellers alike have to grab onto that, whatever interest there is, and run to the bank with it. So,
right. And so okay, let me just, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just very curious, but for those folks who are maybe considering jumping in, but maybe on the pause side, what is that doing to the rental market today? I'm curious about your thoughts on the rental side of the scale.
I'm sure you've had people on before who have said how hot it is. I would still put it in the hot category. I don't think it's probably as hot as what it was, but I mean, we're still at record highs for New York City real estate rentals. I sell a lot of real estate. I don't do a lot of rentals, but if I had $1 for every time someone inquired about renting a for sale property that I have, that just goes on a daily basis. I'd be a wealthy man. It's incredible right now how many people want to rent. And you have a lot of people in the city right now who are doing first jobs, who are back at their trading floors, back in their banks, and who have disposable income, it seems, or at least want to live their New York life and are being paid very well to do that. So competitively speaking, in the Manhattan market, the rental market is incredible right now. Phenomenal.
Right. Yeah, so
Sorry,
just
John.
one more follow-up. I just want to say, because you mentioned earlier the cash-rich buyers, and I just want to sort of follow up on the sales side. Are you seeing that those cash buyers sort of funnel down to the new dev on the luxury side, or is it sort of more broad, like they're even looking at, say, like Upper East Side co-ops, or is it mainly focused on that, like I said, the new dev luxury
it's broad.
side?
So the average is about 65%, I think, of all purchases right now are all cash deals. If you go to the plus $5 million market, it's about 75% are all cash deals. So obviously for that luxury and new development style of market, you are going to get a high proportion, but there's still cash floating around the city in extremes that we've never seen before. I think what's been interesting for me as a broker is discovering who exactly is cash rich. You have a lot of young people right now who are in Manhattan who are obviously renting, probably first time apartments, just the extreme amounts of cash that they have. seemingly comes from family money. And I think that's a big proponent of New York City's real estate market right now. There are families who are subsidizing their children, either renting apartments or potentially buying apartments in New York City because they don't want to pay those rentals.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me to see these individuals. I've just done a deal on the West Village. It's, in contract. It's a very good deal, $1.5 million first-time apartment, but the individual, she's on her first job. But when you scratch the surface and you see how much wealth there is behind that from the family, you realize that, she can afford a much more expensive place than a $1.5 million place. So I think there's a lot of brokers out there who are probably having these questions with their clients to find out where and how much they can afford to spend, doing the math regarding renting and purchasing, and then finding that they can get themselves a historically pretty good deal in New York City. And why not just buy if they've got the cash? Or put, especially given the market's upheaval. I don't know when this is going to air, but yesterday Nvidia and all the chip companies just did a little hiccup and the NASDAQ went down 3%. So I think people see Manhattan real estate as still a very safe place to be and still a very affordable, as crazy as that sounds, commodity relative to other things.
Yeah. And considering we've had a rough couple of years, generally speaking, volume wise, it's going to be interesting to see if we ever do have a risk on and that volume comes back to New York City, how it's going to be. And I want to talk about New York City in general for just a moment, because I mean, since this post-pandemic environment, I'm just wondering, the depth of money that's in this city is incredible. And I'm wondering, how does New York City really compare and relate, versus the rest of the world?
I mean, New York City is still, and the United States is still the place with the highest net wealth individuals on the planet. But what seemingly has happened since COVID is that there has been a huge shift towards people understanding they don't have to necessarily be in New York City exclusively. Obviously, we've all heard about the flight to Florida, these low tax states, Texas, but we've also seen huge amounts of American buyers buy in Portugal. We've also seen other markets go up extensively. Manila's up 26.5%. Dubai is obviously continually going up. I think it's about up 15% year on year. Bahamas is up about 15% year on year. So what I look at it through a New York City lens because I'm a New York City broker, and what I tend to be seeing, aside from the conversations of people saying, "Oh, I'm buying here, I'm buying there, I'm spending more time here," is that we really are selling more compact style homes. 2 bedrooms that have got great views in a perfectly amenitized building are the ones that are really taking off. They're flying. And I think in this post-COVID world that we're living in, people look at Manhattan and they say, I want to be there. I have to be there. That's the place for me. And I always want to have a footprint in the city. But people are really looking at the utility of the home and saying, do I need to have 5 bedrooms and 4,000 square feet? Well, if I don't, and I only need a 2-bedroom, well, why not just find the ultimate 2-bedroom in Manhattan? And then that allows myself to stay in the Miami market, stay in the London market, which is just incredibly exciting right now. Look to these other markets like Dubai, where potentially I can spend more time there in the winter. It's also a hub for business for the Asian market, where we're seeing extreme creation of wealth, as well as the Middle Eastern market. I think proportionally speaking, the Asian countries and the Middle Eastern countries have the highest rate of growth of individuals with wealth. So New York is a culturally diverse. They're a savvy bunch. They seem to be on the cutting edge of a lot of things just because New York is that place where ideas come together and cultures culminate. And I think we're not seeing a flight away from New York. We're seeing a lot of people look at New York, think about what they need a little bit more, and then find themselves being in other cities, which I think actually makes New York better. We have people now who are educated on what other cities there are out there. New York is now having to compete with these other cities to achieve the patronage of the population. And so I think New York becomes better for those reasons. And it's been interesting right now to experience that because I'm sure you guys know, you call friends and they're away in their Chicago place potentially or LA place. It just feels that there are, one of my favorite ones actually right now, anecdotally speaking, I don't know if you read about it, is Milan has offered $100,000 total tax cap. Or actually, I shouldn't say Milan, I should say Italy, but Milan's obviously an international city. It's been the biggest beneficiary. And people are now thinking, well, I can live overseas, I can live in Italy, my $100,000 total tax cap on everything that I make. And as long as I'm, as long as I'm a resident from somewhere else, I've moved my assets there, then, that's an incredibly exciting tax benefit for a lot of people. So you just see all these movements in all these other places. And because of COVID, I think people understand that they don't have to be, beholden to one particular place. So it's exciting to see all the movement going around. Sorry, I don't necessarily know whether I'm coming up with one specific point here, but it's just observations that I think are incredibly interesting, that when you put a mirror up to New York, you understand that we're not losing anyone, but these other places are going to start affecting what we do here.
No, it's a fascinating conversation, especially because you point out that New York really is in competition with London, Riyadh, Dubai, Milan, as you mentioned, Portugal, and some of these have sort of, demographic issues, right? Shrinking populations in which there are incentives for, new buyers or foreign purchasers to kind of come in. You're thinking of Portugal, thinking of Italy. And then you look at countries like Dubai, in which, amenities is the game, in which there's luxury on top of luxury. And I'd be curious I'm not sure if you can speak to this, but I'm wondering how is the city situated?
We're situated very well because New York has always built condominium buildings. We've always built apartments. We've been at the forefront in history of building these types of buildings. And I think now what's kind of pivoted and changed, because New York obviously has an undersupply of land, is that Manhattan is the amenity. The city is the amenity. The block is the amenity. The neighborhood is the amenity. And so I think what we're finding right now is that people want to be hypothetically in the West Village, and they are prepared to pay a premium to be in the West Village because they want to walk outside their door and they want to be in the West Village. They don't want to walk a few blocks to the West Village. They don't want to, get in a train, or they want to be where they want to be. And because we have these ultra high net wealth individuals, and huge wealth creation, people will pay a premium for that. There's a building I sell, 110 Charlton, which happens to be in Hudson Square, technically a Soho neighborhood. And the prices we've gotten there have been astounding. We've gotten over 4,000 a square foot because people say, I want to be by the river, and I want to be downtown, and I want to be in a fully amenitized building. And they're not prepared to compromise on where they want to be. That's where they want to be. And there are other very nice buildings I've seen. I don't want to name names, but the inland in Tribeca, maybe not with the view breaks, but we're finding that people say, if my budget was this and that's what that gets me, well, I'm prepared to pay more to be exactly where I want to be, with the views, with the amenities. And then, we can talk about all through what people want in an amenity suite and how big they are in relationship to these other cities. But I feel like it would all be apples to oranges. It would make a very interesting conversation. But I think ultimately people will pay the premium to be exactly who they want to be because they want to be in their location, their prime place. Yeah. And as you know, in New York, there aren't a lot of those options. If people say, I only want to be in Soho, how many buildings can we think of in Soho that have a prime amenity package, that have some sort of views and a 24-hour dorm or a condominium? These things don't grow on trees. There's only a handful, especially at a certain bedroom count. So
yeah. Well, I think your example of the 110 Charlton is really special, because that is sort of, you're right. It's Hudson Square. Is it Soho? Is it Village? I mean, they kind of carved out a new neighborhood, and I'm curious, what are your thoughts on sort of the adjacent spaces? Because you mentioned, and I think you're absolutely right, that people are willing to pay the premium to be where they want to be. If that's the West Village, it's not the same on 16th Street. Yes, Chelsea's lovely, but it's not the same as, say, Bank Street. So there really is sort of a premium attached to some of these locations. But I'm wondering, as these premiums grow and as the luxury sort of concentrates, is there a play in the adjacent neighborhoods at all?
I think so. I mean, based on where I bought my real estate, I don't want to give too much away about myself, but I live in Tribeca, and I wouldn't say it's the premier Tony part of Tribeca. I think that people, sometimes look at it and say, maybe there's some elements of this particular home and this particular street that are more attractive to me to being in that, that specific neighborhood. I think they're the people who are like me, who go to work every day in New York City, who have, family who come to them in New York City, who need the infrastructure of New York City. And I think those adjacent neighborhoods, they're the ones that are the ones that, I hate to say this, are the ones for potentially real Manhattan New Yorkers. They're the ones who, who may not want to pay the premium to be a few blocks away in that premier building, but, they've still got a good job. They still do okay. They work hard, and, they probably need things a little differently, but they also understand New York a little more to think, I can be 5 blocks away. I don't need to be right there. The issue is, obviously, it's heart wrenching, but if anyone does have the unlimited capital, they will pay to be there. But I think there's certainly a market. It's just a pivoted market. It's a different type of market that has to look at these, secondary neighborhoods, for want of a better word. And I put myself in that category.
Yeah, same here.
I'm glad you guys were talking about buyers here and their mindsets a little bit. And before we go off the buyer conversation topic and go to the next topic, how are you talking to your buyers, your buyer clients specifically, that are on pause and maybe they're uncertain and they're like, I'm going to wait it out, or they're on a fence. I don't know if I want to pull the trigger here. What are you saying to those guys?
Well, the prices speak for themselves, the value. And then you've really got to look at the individual circumstances. If they're renting, I think that's some potentially easy math to do, given how much expense they're spending. Obviously, if someone's got an extremely low interest rate, what's the benefit for them going into a different scenario? And, then we're talking economically. I think, there's another aspect to all of this real estate stuff that we always talk about, which is personal. What's the life? How is your life? What's going on right now? I think, everyone wants to love the real estate that they're in. Everyone wants to love the home that they're in. So I think there's a lot of, those conversations to be had with people. I think I also think those conversations are much more beneficial when you have a unit you're talking to rather than one individual family member. I think it's very easy to fall into the how am I going to make this work dollars and cents wise. I think when you have 2 people together, for example, then I think one will always bring the rational, we should really think about our lives and the fact that we only live them once type of thing to the table, rather than just, what's the best thing for us to do on a dollars and cents basis with our real estate. So I think at the moment, you have to be tactical and strategic about how you have these conversations with your clients, because ultimately I'm of the belief that now is a great time to buy. If you're getting Manhattan real estate and some great caliber Manhattan real estate at a record price point, low, and it's a home that can give you comfort for an extremely long period of time. And chances are, if you are selling something, you are, in the very least, and I've seen this a lot in the last few months, going to break even if and I'm talking about if you're going for a short period of time, then there's an exciting possibility to be able to, purchase something. And I think, it's very hard to have a one-stop shop conversation about this, but I do think now's a fantastic time to really ask your clients questions about their lives, what they're thinking. There's a lot of upheaval going on. I think you're a trusted advisor as a real estate broker, so people want to put trust in you. You want to receive trust, and so if you're constantly of the belief, which I am right now, that it's a great time to buy, with all that information, there is a way to help your client unlock some value in the market and purchase something. I just think you've got to have those conversations. You've got to have a little bit of time with people and try and do it with both, in a couple. Don't just try and hit on one, because then they're going to have a very difficult conversation probably with the other one as well, rather than you being there and getting both, the information from everyone.
Right. No, I think, Kane, I think that's a fantastic point. You bring up the idea that the agent is this trusted fiduciary, and that is, I think that's often forgotten. And, part of that involves, it's not just black and white. It's not just what is the market right now and what can we get. To your point, there are all of these sort of, nonverbal communications that go on about, well, what is your life like right now? Why are you on the buy side? Why are you thinking about buying? Where do you want to think about buying? And there's a lot of that's based on feelings. And you also mentioned the idea of a tactical conversation. So what I'd really like to do is flip it around now and talk about the sell side and try to understand what are some of the tactical conversations that you can have with the seller to try to get them to reduce price in this sort of quieter market time.
Traffic numbers in the last month or so have been some of the lowest of the year. So we're obviously not engaging with people as much as what we would as sellers. And I think anyone who's on the market right now or going onto the market needs to understand that, because that relates to pricing. there's obviously always going to be someone who'll buy your place in New York City. But, you know, if people aren't looking, then that's problematic. Negotiability is averaging right now around 9%, which is higher than the average. It's usually around 3-4%. And with this understanding, and also understanding an all-time low, you have to price correctly. And if you are already on the market and you're experiencing, I think, what a lot of people are experiencing now, which is nothing is going on, it's no good in this market just lowering to the competitive price point that's on the market. You can do your comps, you can see what's out there, you can present and have those conversations with your seller about where the market is actively transacting. But speaking from experience, this was a few months ago. I had a property at the Park Imperial. We priced it absolutely correctly, because it wasn't a case of let's price it correctly but add a little bit of a premium. It was like, let's price it absolutely correctly, and then let's concede a little bit. Let's get ahead of the market. Let's make people feel like there's value. And we ended up selling it for 11% over asking. 11, which blew my mind, but it made me understand in this particular market, you've really got to ensure that the market feels like, you know, they're getting not only a fair market price, but they're encouraged to purchase the property. And once they feel that, the market will take care of itself, because then that emotion kicks in and people start loving the property and caring about the property, and then they want the property. There's nothing else that's, you know, suitable to them. And then when they justify that 10% premium they're paying over asking, they look at it and they think, well, that's actually a fair comp price when we look at other comps that have traded in the neighborhood. So I think by you having the hard conversations with the seller now, you're only setting yourself up for success. And I think you're setting yourself up for a massive failure if you're holding on to a price point right now that is not reflective of the market. You have to have these conversations right now, because the market isn't getting better. There's no illusion that and I'm talking in the next quarter and potentially 2 quarters, it's not picking up. So you've got to get ahead of it. And getting ahead of it will be the best thing you could possibly do for a seller. You know, I have a property we had it was at 215 Sullivan Street, beautiful building. We had it on the market for $5 million. It was absolutely gorgeous, and people were loving it. People were coming in, but we could feel the market getting away from us, just because the market wasn't great. And so we dropped it to 4.5 million and sold it within 2 weeks. And there were some other tweaks we made as well, but a 10% price drop wasn't palatable for the sellers. They hated the idea of that, but you know, it took some time, some navigation, but ultimately they employ you to sell the property. Yeah. They need, and better selling it than needing to sell it. Yeah,
it's the best tactic. Price is the best tactic you got. I mean, honestly, people say, oh, let's take it off the market, let's refresh it, let's stage it. I mean, it can only go that far. At the end of the day, if you're not selling, it's either a price problem, a product problem, or a market problem. And we've already know there's a market problem. So, and there's product problems out there all day long.
And don't just give small price drops. You have to really carve into it.
Yeah.
You know,
well, you talked about, I mean, you did a 10%, 5 million to 4.5. Now that's a price cut. And let me just say, sir, you know, that the story that you told previously with let's price this correctly and get ahead of it. So few sellers understand that. I guess they have this overwhelming psychological fear of leaving money on the table. Right. And if they price it too low, then the market's just going to penalize them, and they're never going to know if they could have gotten that higher price, when in reality, markets are more efficient than you think. And what you did right there is you created a sense of urgency. And that's what sellers aren't doing right now.
I think also markets are dynamic. People don't buy houses all the time. And what we're dealing with now is going to be very different to what the seller dealt with when they purchased. The seller, you have a conversation with what the market was like when the seller purchased. You know, what it was like buying this house. Where was the market at? What were you buying? What were you seeing? You know, because then you start thinking, oh, so this is how you understand the selling market. And let me tell you, and now let me tell you what this selling market is we're in right now is like. And I can explain to you what's going on. And then we can have that conversation. I just think people, unfortunately, aren't looking at it from the other person's point of view a lot of the time.
Yeah, they're biased. They're definitely biased. I couldn't agree more. we're running out of time here, but I have one last question that I do want to sneak in, Kane, before I let you go. You've given a lot of really interesting thoughts on different questions that we asked today. So I'm glad that we talked about that stuff, but I do want to circle back to one question that we tend to ask on this show and end with. And that is, in all of your years of experience and all of your situations you've been through, what would you say to yourself if you were talking to yourself 10, 12 years ago and you're just starting out now? Another way of saying this is, what could you tell agents that they can do to help bring them to the next level up?
Be friends with as many good brokers as possible. The community needs each other. The information you get from other brokers is astounding. You can see as many properties as you want, but if you speak to and have a close-knit group of 3 other brokers with you, you've obviously quadrupled the amount of properties you've seen, what's good, what's interesting, where the market's going. It's so important to start off in the industry being with great people, around great people, people who have a great work ethic, who are admirable, have good integrity. And I'd say, fast forward your career a little bit. Not all these people are going to continue being brokers. Not all these people are going to stay in New York. Not all these people are going to be doing the same business. And yet some may achieve wonderful things. I find now that the brokers I was young and came up with are doing such exceptional things. And for that reason, your clients end up getting benefits from it. I know pricing of things. I hear about things coming to the market before anyone else otherwise would. I have discussions about, and very honest and real discussions about where the market is and what things could get for pricing. I think when you go into it, there is a competitive nature of any individual in a business to think that one person might be doing business and you want to do that business. But I cannot express enough how you just have a camaraderie of brokers around you. It will be wonders for you long term in your career. And then it's as simple as that. I mean, now I even find brokers call me and say, "Oh, would you like to put this listing on together? Would you like to share this? Can you give me your advice about this?" And all of a sudden, business starts coming where you wouldn't think it would, because they're not actually clients. But brokers need each other too. I just saw the place out in Brooklyn. I've never been to Sunset Park in my entire life in Brooklyn, but there's a wonderful broker, and I did some fantastic business for someone who did some plumbing work on my apartment here. And she just put it into contract for 1.4 million. Fantastic. Because I had a great relationship with this particular broker. I think just get yourself in a great space of people.
Yeah, I love it. And you're in the intelligence business, right? I mean, you're in that space of people. You're getting all that inside information coming right through you. I mean, you're in the intelligence business, if you think about it.
Yeah. And what better than when that particular person in the intelligence business works for the other government, so to speak, or the other,
right.
All of a sudden you're sharing secrets that,
Well, it's a fantastic point, because a lot of agents, they start and there's so much focus on getting your client book and getting that. And it's all about, how can I grow my network? How can I grab these clients? How can I grab these exclusives? And there's so much focus on controlling every micro detail that you're actually not going to grow your business unless you don't have to let go of your clients, but you have to embrace the brokerage side. You have to embrace your competition, so to speak.
But it's the only business that deals in as much money as what we do, where we can insider trade.
That's true.
Why aren't we on insider trading?
When this is over, Kane, I'm going to give you a call. So we can talk about a couple things. I love it. Really, really good stuff here. Kane Manera over at Corcoran. Thank you so much for your time. That is John Walkup. I am Noah Rosenblatt. We are UrbanDigs, and this has been Talking Manhattan, and we'll catch you guys next time. Cheers, everybody.